so many subjects going here. Let's start so Surma first question that I wanted to ask everyone here is, are women and people belonging to other genders being left behind in terms of data, digitization, and in terms of policies and implementation? And what are the reasons for the inadequate gender data in Nepal and their reasons? यो क्वेसन चाहिँ मैले सबैजनालाई एक एक गर्दै सुरु गरेँ। सुरुमा चाहिँ I will start with Rasul.
Thank you, Ms. Lady. It's an honor to be here. I'm sure the discussion and deliberation since the morning has set a stage for this particular panel discussion, focusing on data, dialogue, and decision. My perspective as an academic, I would definitely say that for me, data is the fundamental starting point. Data is very crucial. It's imperative for even initiating any kind of meaningful dialogue. Any kind of informed decision making should be grounded on data. And when we say data, it's going to be very important when we also talk about evidence-based decision making. And as a management academic, I cannot reiterate this importance and imperative of data, both on the policy level and also in the institutional and organizational level. Since the conference largely is surrounding around women in data, right? So for me, yes, what I see as a challenge is the availability of disaggregated data when it comes to gender. Of course, when we are talking about devising any kind of policy, we need to look into data. But where is data? And that's where I think we lack hugely. Let's say when you're talking about women, we talk about women as also comprising of half of the population, in our country at least, right? So any kind of policy formulation, be it about health or education or property rights, land ownership, etc., or even migration these days, has to be guided by the data that we have. I will share my perspective with my short-term consulting with World Bank at one point of time when we were trying to come up with an assessment of the digital divide, focusing on gender, so gender digital divide. So when you just look into in terms of the ownership of digital devices for women, so we'll have to look it across all the intersection, right? Not just gender, female versus male, but also female across all age groups, all income category, education, particular caste, ethnicity, minority, or disadvantaged group. If we have good quality data, reliable data, credible sources, probably we can then formulate targeted intervention for devising and mitigating this digital gap. But we struggle, honestly, we struggle because there are a couple of things which I'll share in my successive answers. We struggle because, because the importance of data is not greatly realized among the policymakers. We cannot generalize, but that's been a case. There have been good documents, policies, but I think implementation has a bigger challenge. Also because when it comes to data collection, data curation, we don't have the technical capacity. And we lack the infrastructure, the ecosystem, whereby we collect data, do the analysis, and more importantly, data is not collected in the right way and not analyzed well. So all of this put together are actually acting as barriers. So I think I've highlighted on the barriers, but if we get the kind of right institutional support, maybe the kind of funding, if we can generate, and more importantly, if we can create this awareness about how important is data going to be for devising any kind of policies, and that's going to surely impact at every level of the government, be it state, provincial, or the local government. We will definitely have to wait for some time, but I think that's the way to go about. So, given the limit of time, I'll pass it on to my fellow moderator.
I'll pass this same question to Caroline and then to Bimalaji as well.
Thanks for the question, and thank you all for sticking around for the last panel. I think rather than focusing on whether or not women and other genders are left behind, I think we've made substantial progress, for sure. We're better now than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So for sure there's progress, but I think for me it's the risks of losing that progress. And those risks come from women and other genders not being in the room when decisions are made about what data are important, what data need to be collected, how we go about collecting that data, how do we make that data available, public. So having women and other genders be part of that discussion and part of that decision making is important, because I think it's a risk if they're not in those conversations. I think another risk of leaving women and other genders behind comes from relying on more of that big data or passive data, data that are just automatically generated that we sometimes turn to make decisions, that we have less control over whether or not that's disaggregated data, whether or not we can get the right details that we need to make the right decisions. That leads to the risk of maybe making the wrong decisions or misinterpreting the data or misinterpreting what it actually means for people other than this sort of broad, neutral character of what the data are telling us. So I think those are two big risks. I think also assuming that we have enough gender disaggregated data right now is a risk. We need to continue to focus on how do we always find ways to put questions in that will help us disaggregate the data in the ways that we need to better understand the impacts on women, the impacts on other genders. So for me, it's about thinking about what are those risks and how do we mitigate those? How do we bring more people into those conversations and help ensure that all the genders are represented and that we have the right data when we need that data.
Thank you so much for this very good question. I don't want to repeat what my colleagues already said. I just wanted to recall two notions that prevailed in Nepal till about 2 decades ago, if you see. The notions were, when we talk about community that time, we said that Hami Nepali, Hamro Nepal. All Nepali were one identity. All Nepali had one identity, and that is Nepali. So in the community where there were a lot of diversity in terms of caste, ethnicity, the languages, the religion, the age, gender, they were not counted that time. So that was the notion the government pursued that time. Another notion was how all the interventions, all the decisions made and all the interventions that were from the part of government and also mostly in non-government sector for so-called development was household based. And when we talk about household, head of the household were mostly men, and women even didn't, no one in the villages knew women's name, by name. They were wife of A, mother of B, When I did my PhD in 2006, it's not very far. I went to a village where no one knew the name of women in that village. And how do we find those women in data? So these were the two notions that time. The women became more visible, disadvantaged caste and ethnic groups became more visible, people with disability became more visible after the democracy. And especially when we are at the, the republic age now, we have revised population census data, gender desegregation have become as a norm now. So, as Caroline said, a lot of progress has been made, but still, invisibility we can see. But we cannot change things overnight. Things are changing in positive direction. That's what I will say. Thank you.
So while Bimala ma'am talked about change is coming over time, I got to listen to one of your podcasts where you mentioned how you had changed the passports, the registration systems online and everything as well during your time of 42 days as the foreign minister of Nepal as well. And when we are talking about the changing technologies and changing times, I also wanted to ask how government systems are being strengthened to support the larger gender movement, as well as integrating data and information in all of that, and how we are accommodating to the newer technologies like AI, which will in turn also bring more biasness in context of your own experiences and you being in different leadership positions and as political analysts as well.
Honestly, there are systems that are changing. Gender desegregation, desegregation by caste, ethnicity, desegregation by disability, these have been built now in data system. So I see that positively. If you see budget system, for example, there has been, we are practicing gender-based budget, right? Gender responsive budgeting has been a norm now, which is good. Also, since past few years, we have been allocating resources based on data. And because gender desegregation has become a norm now, so it has definitely influenced the decisions and interventions. But still, I find a lot of challenges, especially the reliability of data, credibility of data, quality of data, how the data were collected, whether there was a bias in collection of data, whether there was a bias in desegregation itself. There are issues like that. But data are increasingly being used in decisions. The thing that I worry much is about whether we are making decisions based on evidences. And because I served about 16 months in National Planning Commission, we tried our best, but Nepal's government data are generated by CBS, Central Bureau of Statistics, which is only the biggest source of data for government to influence decisions. And CBS is very good in terms of the capacity and system, but working under National Planning Commission, even the CBS data we are not adequately using in the decisions. If we had used those data in the decision, we would not have been the situation today where nearly 50% of Dalit women are illiterate or don't go to school. At the moment, we are dealing with an issue because there are many young women here. I just wanted to draw your attention to one of the big issues. That issue is a parliamentary committee recently instructed government to reduce age of marriage from 20 to 18. What was the basis for that instruction? The basis for instruction was visit of some parliamentarians to nearby jails in Kathmandu, where they found a lot of adolescent boys, young boys, who are in jail because of early marriage or because of the rape cases, right? And before giving the instruction, neither the parliament looked at it, nor the government which is working on that instruction has looked the data. Data has been produced by Patan Hospital, Kathmandu Medical College, and that gives ample evidences of why the early pregnancy is dangerous for women. Why being mother before the age of 21 is very dangerous for women. You see a lot of data in that. But who will look at the data? People look at jail, found few youth in the jail and decided that. So my worry is basically, there are ample evidences, ample data available outside, in hospital, in public health areas, there are so many other areas as well, but they are not analyzed, they are not looked at while making the decisions, while giving the instructions. So this needs to be inbuilt in the practice, that before we make any decisions, we look at the evidences, we look at the data. And that is not norm at the moment. We do have data. Their quality is in question, reliability may be in question, credibility may be in question, but at least look at whatever available, at least discuss on that. And that we are not doing. So that is one of the biggest worries. The second part of your question related to AI, this is very new for Nepal government, I would say. Outside the government system, some advancement has been made, but inside the government system, the implications of AI, how we use information generated by AI to influence decision making has been very rare till now. I think we need to build on our capacity. We need to catch the race to be able to use this new generation of technologies. Thank you.
So we talked a little bit around the national planning and everything. So coming down to the local economy as well, I want to ask Ms. Rosizi as well, how are data and digitization influencing local economy, and how is it boosting local planning and growth, and specifically in context of gender as well?
I might have sounded a little pessimistic when I began, but that's not what I meant. So I echo similar thoughts with my fellow panelists. Only thing is, when I was actually into doing this short-term project on gender digital divide, that's where I actually struggled. So that was a few years ago. So yes, disaggregated data is there, but as ma'am also said, Bimla ma'am, I think it's not been analyzed well. So that's where the struggle is perhaps at the moment as well. So we all understand the need and the necessity for data curation. So data is there, but I think it's right now where we stand is this is not collected and analyzed well, because I also think because there is a greater disconnect between academia, policy making, and organization that works at the grassroots level. Probably they're working in silos. Everybody has data. When it comes to sourcing some kind of funding, we also get funding in universities. Different organizations also get that, but we don't sit together and use it for a common purpose. So I think that's where also is a bigger challenge on the challenge side of it. And also, I'll try to share my experience on digital side of it, because most of you seems to be tech students coming from technology background, and which is going to shape everything in the country, from economy to politics to governance. So when we tried to reach out for data, what we felt was, at least on the digitalization side of it, and I've carried out research on digitalization, women entrepreneurship. So the problem, what happens is, like for example, I was trying to find some recent statistics about women owning some of these digital devices. So World Bank 2021 data, there's a statistics that suggest only 3% of women have actually used technology, internet or mobile devices for accessing banking services. And compared to this, there's another statistics where male versus female, in terms of their uses of having received or made financial payments came across in the ratio of 17 to 23. So of course there's still a gender digital divide. I'm trying to emphasize this because at least in the context of digitalization, if we were to come up with more targeted policies where we really want to bridge this gap, probably we'll have to start looking into where exactly. It's just not just about two genders, but also about which geography do they come from and what kind of support should we initiate. So I think the problem lies, I would kind of summarize, I've written about it earlier as well, when it comes to digital inclusion, perhaps we have to start with awareness building for women, noting that which particular section of the women are they even aware about digitalization practices, AI and technology uses. Then comes the case of once they're aware, probably then we can talk about accessibility. Accessibility, where as women, do they get the proper access of the digital infrastructure and the availability, right? Do they actually can avail some of these services? And finally, affordability. And there's no exact data on number of handheld devices that men and women get. Maybe it's mobile or it could be any other handheld devices. So when you don't have those kind of data segregated, only on the digital side I'm talking about, of course that can be looked into the similar lens into health and education and so on and so forth. But for digitalization, so what I sense is if we can start looking into data at this minute level, perhaps we can have more informed and better informed policies. And if the policies are going to be more informed, I think that's going to shape the entire economy, and that's going to provide the direction for the entire country as well.
So, we came to the national planning, we came to the local, and now I want to ask Caroline, in terms of the work that ASIA Foundation has been doing as well, which is in all level of governance in some ways, national, subnational, even in the local municipal level. So many of these programs are also part of the Data for Development, but ASIA Foundation has different programs in different ends as well. So, a lot of organizations, similar to WIT, has also been working around capacity development. A lot of organization inside DFOD and inside TAF has been building systems that are specifically working with data at its core. So I want to ask you on a very positive note as well, what have been the recent victories in these last two phases as well, and how have we been overcoming the barriers, contextual, social, geographical, and everything as well?
Thank you. I think, so the Data for Development program is in the end of its second phase. So this program has been going on in partnership since 2017. So there's a long journey that this program has made. And I would say one of the big achievements that this program has really fostered is more dialogue across the three tiers of government. So we're seeing more open discussions across local, provincial, and federal government that work on data systems, and that's such an important part of really strengthening the data ecosystem in Nepal. Just to have all three tiers in one room talking about what are some of the challenges and what are some of the opportunities that there are to strengthen how we share data, how we make data more open and available, and how we work not just within the government itself, but with partners like all the organizations in this room and with academics and students. And so really harnessing all of that energy to tackle some of the big data challenges. At the local level, we've also worked on data systems that look at, ideally, we would love interoperability. That's the end goal. But at this stage, it's really how can we look more at making data accessible and available. So this team has put together an integrated data management system that's in place at a local government level so that all data can be accessed by all the different line ministries within a local government office. So if someone from the health line ministry wants to understand what's happening with WASH or what's happening with waste management, that data is accessible through this integrated data management system. And I think that's made a huge impact on how local governments and how organizations like that work in data, civic tech organizations, can access data and information. Another one that we've been working on is a judicial affairs management system. And this is particularly relevant for women and people that are from marginalized groups because it makes accessing justice more efficient. So it really targets how do we process cases at a local government level so that the deputy mayor who manages the judicial committee and who manages really a massive caseload of disputes can more efficiently process those and provide those services to constituents. And a lot of them are women, a lot of them come from marginalized backgrounds. So those are a couple of the systems that we think have a lot of promise. They've been piloted in a handful of municipalities. I think where there still remain challenges, and I don't know if they're barriers, but it was really how do you sustain those types of initiatives so that there's enough budget and technical support that can really sustain those systems and can update those systems and can manage the input and actually use that data eventually for the decision making that I think can be so helpful for writing policies and legislation based on this. I think that goal towards interoperability is another challenge that we're all looking forward to down the line. How can we use data, not just make data accessible, but really use it across different units and even across the entire data ecosystem. So yeah, there's some good wins, and I think there's still room to continue to work and really think about how that disaggregated data can be meaningfully analyzed and then put into the policy making process at all tiers of government.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I guess it also comes into experience of all of us having been working in the community level, in grassroots level, in local village level at all ends as well, and seeing like how data flows between different places, different points, and understanding where the stoppage happens, where the barriers happen, and what are the issues. Is it data skills issues? Is it capacity issues? And all of that as well in terms of operability as well. Thank you so much, Carolyn. And something that I wanted to ask everyone here is also around, since we all are in some ways advocating as well. So we have talked about data systems, we have talked about biases, we have talked about is there data or is there not enough data? And if there is not enough data, what can we do around that? So we know that women are not visible enough. So we have talked about this, you have mentioned about this as well. So in what ways can we actually create the stories, can we actually create the narratives that make women visible with the data, with the narratives, with everything that we have at the moment? Because let's be honest, a lot of our policies, advocacies, a lot of our work processes are based on storytelling and narratives as well. So there's no exact way we can go without it. So how can we make better database storytelling in all of this? I wanted to ask this starting from Bimala ma'am.
तपाईँले मलाई स्टोरी टेलिङ भन्नुभयो, लेट मी सेयर यु द स्टोरी अगेन है त. Can I speak in Nepali? I see a lot of Nepali youths. I was doing bachelor's in agriculture, है. अनि त्यति बेला नेपालमा महिलाहरूको एबोर्सन राइट थिएन. So those women who had to do abortion, लुकीछिपी गर्नु पर्थ्यो है. म एडभोकेसीमा युज कसरी हुन्छ भनेर भन्दैछु. There was a lot of advocacy going on from outside the government, from women activists, to legalize the abortion because this was very unsafe. के तर कसैले सुनेन, सुनेको पनि थिएन, गरेको पनि थिएन. What happened that time? चितवनमा एउटा केस आयो. एउटा केस कस्तो आयो भनेदेखि 4वटा छोरी भइसकेको अनि 5th पनि छोरी नै भएको थाहा भएपछि हस्बेन्ड वाइफ दुईटै एबोर्सन गर्न आउनुभयो हस्पिटलमा देखाउनु भयो अनि अब सेक्स डिटेक्ट गर्ने बेला थियो त्यति बेला अहिले त इट्स नट अलाउड लिगली तर त्यति बेला चाहिँ सेक्स डिटेक्ट गर्थ्यो अनि उहाँले भन्नुभयो यो चाहिँ आई डिडन्ट वान्ट दिस बेबी सो एबोर्सन गर्छु बिकज एबोर्सन वाज नट लिगलाइज्ड डक्टरले के भन्नुभयो भने in the evening you can come to my clinic and I will do the abortion this is a government hospital and I cannot do that right अनि त्यो महिला उहाँको हस्बेन्ड सहित बेलुका क्लिनिकमा जानुभयो अब गॉड नोज व्हाट ह्यापन्ड अब हामीले बाहिर सुन्दाखेरि चाहिँ के सुन्यौं भनेदेखि एबोर्सन गर्ने क्रममा लाइन गयो मैनबत्ती बालेर एबोर्सन गरेको थियो समथिङ वेन्ट रङ एन्ड द वुमन डाइड women ko death bhako we knew but what happened in between we don't know so there was a big case big story tapaile story भन्नु भयो त्यो भएर म am telling you the story this story चाहिँ media ma एकदम धेरै आयो अनि we were student leaders at that time in student union so we also came in sadak हैन this was a big issue यति धेरै इस्यु भयो अनि त्यसले एउटा पुश के भयो भने कम्तीमा एबोर्सन लिगलाइज गरौँ and then it came to laws and policies and you know the guidelines and all these things there were certain conditions कस्तोलाई एबोर्सन गर्न दिने कस्तोलाई नदिने कति महिना there were certain conditions but abortion was legalized it was not because of the government's own initiatives, but this was because of the advocacy. And advocacy, the cases, what we all heard, was the story behind it. है त्यस्ता थुप्रै हामीसँग उदाहरणहरू छन् जस्तो एउटा त अब यो एसिड सम्बन्धी जुन ल आएको छ त्यो पनि एउटा बिग घटनाबाट आएको इन्फ्लुएन्स भएको हो नि त हैन मुस्कानको त्यो भएर डेटाले स्टोरीले it has a lot of meaning and lots of power it's a very powerful tool data stories भनेको it's a very powerful tool of advocacy if it is used properly त्यो भएर यो नेपालमा पनि भएको छ वर्ल्डमा पनि भएको छ that we agree कहाँनिर प्रब्लम लाग्छ भनेदेखि इन्टरभेन्सन्समा गएर प्रब्लम लाग्छ किनभने we do have a lot of good data disaggregation पनि छ अहिले but we don't use it when we design the interventions simple उदाहरण दिन्छु मैले क्यारोलिनले भन्नुभयो a lot of systems have been built at the province level at the local government level fine but are we able and capable to use those data and translate them into interventions उदाहरणै दिन्छु म climate change has become a real challenge it's a crisis now right Nepal government le ke gareko cha every VDC ko we know which VDC is most vulnerable in Nepal which watershed is more vulnerable which village is more vulnerable भन्ने कुरा we do have data we do have very good reports तर those the most vulnerable VDCs VDC पनि भन्दैन अरे के पालिका भन्छ हैन most vulnerable municipalities are they capable enough and have they developed adaptation plan based on the data no we do have very good reports we do have very good data very good maps but what do we do त्यसले इन्टरभेन्सन्स लाई इफेक्ट गरेको छ त भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ अप्ठ्यारो छ अब छैन त मैले यहाँ भन्दिन तर अप्ठ्यारो छ अदरवाइज सिम्पल छ के डेटाले के भन्छ भने तराईमा 95% दलित्स आर ल्यान्डलेस डेटाले भन्छ तराईमा 95% दलित्स आर ल्यान्डलेस त्यसो भने ल्यान्ड डिस्ट्रिब्युसनको पहिलो प्रायोरिटी तराईको दलितलाई गरे भइहाल्यो नि त हैन र अनि फेरि डेटाले के भन्छ भने तराई वुमेनहरुमा इलिटरेसीको सबभन्दा ठूलो 46% हैन त अहिले इलिटरेसीको सबभन्दा ठूलो समस्या तराईमा छ अनि यो एजुकेसनको यो चाहिँ होल क्याम्पेन चाहिँ तराई वुमेनमा फोकस गरे हुँदैन किन गरिरहेका छैनौँ त हामीले हामी सबै कुरा चाहिँ के गर्छौँ भने देशभरि गर्न थाल्छौँ अनि हाम्रो बजेट पनि छरिन्छ हैन जहाँ पोभर्टी छ जहाँ इनइक्वालिटी छ त्यही फोकस गरौँ न त अहिले हामीले 6 इयर्स अगाडि 40% थियो यो बाल के भन्छ बाल विवाह के 18 वर्षभन्दा मुनि विवाह गर्ने बालिकाहरूको चाहिँ प्रतिशत चाहिँ 6 वर्ष अगाडि 40% थियो अहिले पनि 36% छ कहाँ छ मेजोरिटी मधेसमा सो व्हाट आर वी डुइङ मधेसमा क्याम्पेन किन नगरे मधेसमा बेसकन इन्टरभेन्सन्स किन नगरे पाठेघर खस्ने समस्या है युटेरस प्रोल्याप्सको पाठेघर खस्ने समस्या मिड हिलमा सबभन्दा बढी छ वाइ आर वी नट फोकसिङ टु मिड हिल्स फर रिप्रोडक्टिभ हेल्थ So there are ample evidences, ample data, but how are they being translated into interventions and how are they influencing the budgets? How are they influencing the program? That is the major issue. Oile federalism le a lot of potentials ल्याएको छ federalism le we do have 3 tiers of government हैन तर अहिले पनि province मा र स्थानीय तहमा ह्युमन रिसोर्सको कमी छ बजेटको कमी छ सिस्टमकै कमी छ स्किल्ड पिपलको कमी छ भनेपछि नम्बर पनि स्किलको पनि कमी छ भनेपछि इट्स नट बिङ ट्रान्सलेटेड देयर एज वेल सो मेरो समस्या चाहिँ के हो भने एडभोकेसीमा राम्रो प्रयोग भएको पनि छ डेटाहरू तर दे आर do not exist त म भन्दिनँ but they are insufficiently reflected in interventions and evidence-based policy making is still quite weak when we talk about government. त्यति नै भने thank you.
Passing on to the same question to Caroline as well around, because as Director of Impact, you are making impactful stories, right? So how are you creating those stories that make women visible?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind when you're using data to tell stories is the context. And how do you contextualize that data and explain why that data is important, why it's relevant, why it's maybe an innovative new idea that you're able to share because of that data. So contextualizing it is probably the most important thing you can do. I think one thing that I love about data is that you could give one data set to everyone in this room and everyone in the room would have their own interpretation of that data set. Even though it's the same numbers, we would all bring our own personal biases, our own personal desire to tell a story from that data. And so that being aware of what your own personal biases are and what is it that you're trying to communicate, what is it the story that is important to tell, because we can often misinterpret or mislead with data because we're so personally attached to a story that we may just tell the story we want to tell without really digging into the why behind the numbers are what they are. So I think contextualizing it and really trying to unpack why is that difference in the data emerging. I think a couple other things that are important when storytelling is simplifying the data, because we often throw so many numbers out in a story that you can get lost in the data. So really simplifying, even visualizing data can be really helpful when trying to communicate what you want to tell from that data. And then as someone who was a liberal arts student, I'm not a techie, but I certainly studied data, but I also studied liberal arts. Writing skills are so important to be able to explain a story and to be able to interpret data and to be able to write about data well. So having those skills underpinning the technical skills to tell that story can be really important. So I hope it's not exactly on how we tell women's stories, but I think for any stories we want to tell with data, those are sort of.
So I know Rosie is also an op-ed writer and a avid writer at one, and has been writing a lot of editorials as well. So I got chance to read some of those, and it's the same question for you as well in terms of when you're writing those stories, when you're advocating through those stories, how are you telling the data better?
All right, yeah. So we are nearing the conclusion, perhaps. So let me again reiterate the fact that how important is data, because as an academic, we are both users and also generators of data. We generate. So as an academic and having gone through my doctoral journey very recently, I believe my approach is qualitative. We're talking about how people are going to interpret the same data from different lens, and that's of course obvious, especially in a scene where we don't have a lot of empirical data to base on. So we'll have to take help of the stories. For me, stories are even data, and that's what in the academic parlance, that's how we understand qualitative data, narratives. So those are all data for us. So whenever I get a chance to visit any place, meeting women entrepreneurs. Last week I was in Ramithap. I was taking my students, so we meet women entrepreneurs. So they're going to tell something, which I bring in and write an op-ed piece because I have to write one every month. So I make it a point that the stories that I get, I'm going to curate it in a form of opinion piece, but again, look it from the data angle. So what it is suggesting. So as women entrepreneurs, the kind of challenges that they have with regard to access to finance, in terms of land ownership, property rights, all of those challenges. But the interesting part, again, having said the recent article that I wrote was on the coffee farming in Nepal. So it's all, I mean, agriculture itself in general is actually, majority of them are women who are doing the agricultural practices across the country, wherever I go, from Bajura to the recent one in Ramithap. So it's telling the story is telling a data that women are largely involved in agriculture, and they are the one who's to be given these priorities when it comes to access to finance. So though exactly like we don't have accurate data, but at least some of the stories in whatever forms we can share, be it in an opinion piece, be it in a research form, articles. I hope as an academician, whatever we produce in a form of research or an article is going to help policymakers to understand where we stand today in terms of giving some of these priorities to women, not just entrepreneurs, but in general. I come from management domain, so I look at it from the management side of it. So as a management practitioner, as an academic, I believe data are not sufficient. But having said that, we can always find ways to have meaningful discourse with the kind of data that we have that is available, maybe organizing a conference like this, making people aware of the necessity. And also right now, at least in our university, we understand the need for data analysis. So we have integrated courses, not just separate courses on big data analytics because that's the trend, but again, even for regular courses, in whether it's marketing or HR or finance, so data analytics courses are integrated. So I think as an academic, our responsibility is to produce data analysts, data engineers. I think we're getting there, we're doing that, and I think in years to come, that's where we'll see more people who are more conversant with using data as a researcher, because research is something in general parlance, people think it's doing a Google is research, which is not the case. So you have to know the technicalities of research. So I tell my students giving a work, just Googling it out, or even these days ChatGPT or getting into DeepSeek is not about doing research, right? So doing research is about meeting people, getting primary data, collecting primary data, analyzing both primary, secondary data, try to understand what story is it presenting. So I think meaningful conversation like this is going to be a very useful start. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like the point where you said going into ChatGPT and writing a question is not research. So research takes a lot more than that. And as we come to the end of the entire panel segment as well, I wanted to ask this to all the panelists in very short and very like 1 minute form as well, because we have a lot of young people in our audience, a lot of people who are studying in their bachelor's, maybe from technology background, but also there are from other different backgrounds. We also have young professionals from all backgrounds, starting from forestry, law, management, administration, and everything as well. So what kind of advice or what do you say is the next strategy if we are to actually strengthen the entire data ecosystem and gender data ecosystem in all of it? Question is starting from Rosie ma'am, and I guess we can go through.
For me, as an academic, as a researcher, this does not work when it has to usually. Yeah, okay. So for me, as an academic, as a researcher, I see data everywhere I go. Even if I read a piece, if I talk to a person, as I said just now, the narrative that gets into my head is he's telling a story, but it's saying something. So you'll have to infer. So in order to be able to derive some kind of inference, you should learn how to interpret data. So that is a bit of technical skills and know-how as well. And probably whichever genre you are, whether you are a lawyer or an IT background or management personnel, wherever you are from, I think some part of data, some part of research is integrated in every university curriculum these days. And at least what you do is do a project. So even when you're doing a project, try to apply that academic bent of mind where you can see and you can understand and you can interpret the data that helps you to understand the general scenario, create a narrative, and also help to start some kind of discourse in your own personal disciplines, in your own discipline. So I think that's the way to go about.
I think, building on that, I think one thing that we always try to do is figure out what problem we're actually trying to solve with data. And so for young people in this room who are looking at how do I make better use of data, I think also understanding the problem or the challenge that you're trying to solve with that data becomes very important and sometimes overlooked. We don't always spend the time to really analyze the problem first. You may even find that there's data associated with that problem that you can first unpack, analyze, look at that problem from multiple angles. How does that problem affect men, women, other genders differently? And then begin to think, how can data solve this problem? So I would always say, try a problem-driven approach when looking at data.
Thank you. When I see young faces around me, मैले के लाग्छ भने मलाई यहाँ आउनु भएका जति पनि men and women youthsहरु हुनुहुन्छ, तपाईहरु कोही भोलिको पोलिटिशियन हो, आजैको पनि होला कतिजना है, अनि भोलि पनि तपाईहरु लेजिस्लेटर भएर आउनुहुन्छ, कतिपय तपाईहरु ब्युरोक्रेसीमा जानुहुन्छ, इन्टरभेन्सन्स डिजाइन गर्ने ठाउँ हो, लेजिस्लेसन भनेको पोलिसी बनाउने ठाउँ हो, इन्टरभेन्सन्स डिजाइन गर्ने ठाउँ भनेको ब्युरोक्रेसी हो, जहाँ बसेर हामी प्रोग्रामको डिजाइन गर्छौं, अनि जस्टिस दिने ठाउँ भनेको जुडिसियरी हो। मैले यहाँ भएको फेसहरु तपाईहरुलाई मैले त्यो तीनटा ठाउँमा देखिरहेछु कहीं न कहीं। मलाई धेरै यङ चाहिँ वुमनहरु चाहिँ कुनै न कुनै तरिकाले यो तीनटा इन्स्टिट्युसनमा गए हुन्थ्यो जस्तो लाग्छ। र त्यो ठाउँमा जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ एजम्पसनको आधारमा, इमोसन्सको आधारमा होइन, डेटा र एभिडेन्सको आधारमा डिसिजन लिनुस्। म त्यही भन्छु। डेटा र एभिडेन्सको आधारमा डिसिजन लिनुभयो भने त्यसले त्यो पपुलारिटी अहिले गेन हुन्छ हुँदैन मलाई थाहा छैन, तर पछि गएर त्यसले सोलिड रिजल्ट दिन्छ है। हामी कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ टु मच त्यो पपुलारिटी गेन गर्ने उसमा चाहिँ कहिले एजम्पसनमा, कहिले चाहिँ वन केसको पछाडी लागेर डिसिजन गर्छौं। अहिलेको मेम्बर अफ पार्लियामेन्टहरुको छलफल धेरै हेर्नुभयो भनेदेखि, म 6 वर्ष त्यहाँ काम गरेर आएको, डेटाले एभिडेन्सले उहाँहरुको आर्गुमेन्ट सेप गर्दैन। धेरैको आर्गुमेन्ट चाहिँ आज बिहान पत्रिकाले के लेख्यो त्यसको आधारमा सेभ हुन्छ, विच इज नट अ गुड साइन है। त्यो भएर जुन ठाउँमा जानुहुन्छ डेटामा इन्भेस्ट गर्नुपर्छ, एभिडेन्समा इन्भेस्ट गर्नुपर्छ र त्यसले तपाईँले गर्ने डिसिजनलाई इन्फर्म गर्नुभयो भने मात्रै चाहिँ वर्थ हुन्छ। यो अहिलेको प्रोग्रामको पनि वर्थ चाहिँ मैले त्यहाँनिर देखेको छु। यहाँहरू सबैलाई मैले शुभकामना भने। थ्याङ्क यू।
Thank you to all our panelists and everyone for listening to us as well. I hope this has been a very fruitful conversation for everyone as well. So we talked about interoperability, working in the silos, how data actually goes into decision making, how the 3 tiers of governments are using all this data in different approaches. And we also talked about the challenges and barriers in the implementation phase, how much data that we have and how can we use that data with the resources that we have at the moment. We also talked about the capacity of those people who are in charge of this data in all these places and with you as well, because data is everywhere at this point, right? So with all the people who are in the audience today, with the people who are from all the professions, technical, non-technical, but we are working with data in one way or another. So when Carolyn talked about how each person looks at different data, we just did a breakout session upstairs as well, where we gave data sets to all the people, and they had different interpretation of the same data sets as well. So while we're also working with data, we need to think about our own personal biasness, our own personal thoughts, and how we are getting those thoughts from. And in all of this, the main thing that we definitely can get out of this conversation is that gender data is intersectional. And although we might be working in different fields, but we are all part of the data system. We are all part of building this data system, building the systems in technology in general as well. We are all part of media as well. We are all part of the advocacies as well. Because we are all, in some ways, advocates in our own respect. Maybe we post something in social media, or maybe we talk about our issues to the peers next to us. So in this panel of data dialogues and decision making, I hope that you learned something out of it. I hope that you are starting to ask very curiously the right questions as well. And with that, I thank everyone who is here today for listening to us, for listening to maybe how much of it you actually agree with or disagree with, and we can definitely have this conversation later on as well. Thank you everyone for listening to us. Thank you to the panelists.